because I just wanted to have a few minutes to make sure that you guys are on track for what you're going to be doing on Thursday's presentation, and kind of talk to you about what you've come up with and how and exactly how you'll be presenting. And so, like I've talked about, and I'm just clarifying with all the groups because I don't think it was very clear, when it's your turn to present, you are going to initially, you'll cut when you're starting, you'll say, okay, guys, so we are seventh graders, and the TEK that we had to align with is this TEK, whichever one is from your plan. And here is the product that we came up with to show our understanding. And so at that time, you're going to share whatever it is that you guys have created, whether it's a podcast, an interview, letters, whatever your ultimate, product is from your lesson plan that is part 2. And then after you share that, we'll say, okay, now we go from being the students back to being the teachers. And as a class, we'll kind of discuss your presentation with you and ask some different questions about your plan and just have a little conversation around it. So I think that each, pair, like you and your partner, will each take about 20 minutes to share your work and have that discussion. And so now I just want to hear about what your product is that you guys have planned on, or, if that makes sense to you, questions, all of that.
So for Ali and I, we were gonna do letters.
Okay.
One from like my point of view of a child during when they used to work in the factories, and then one from the point of view of today of like having to deal with the pandemic. And then we wanted to see. We were thinking of having like for them to able to study that they would have stations. At one station there would be we found a book where it's like a little theater, like a reader's theater.
Mm-hmm.
So each person has like their own little part. So they would read that about how a child lived during that time when they had to work at factories. And then they would like rotate around different stations, where another station they would watch like a little small video over how the life of the kids were during that time. And then there was another station where they would look at different pictures during that time period too. And then we had, I think, another one where they would just have different books where they could talk about the different during the industrial period during that time. And then they would have the one station where they would sit with us, and we would kind of discuss over what was happening during that time, and how does that how they think a problem they have as kids right now.
Okay.
So, and I think we would divide, like half the students would write their letters from the point of view of the child during the industrial period, and half of them would write their point of view from today.
Okay. Well, I like that. And it sounds very well planned there. And so, hey, Eileen, thanks for joining us. We're just talking through these projects, so we'll get to yours in just a second.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So I'm just, okay. So once again, when it's your turn to share, then you're just going to say, here's the TEK that we covered, and what we're going to share with you are 2 different letters that we wrote. And then we'll talk about it after, maybe. And you can maybe you have recorded yourself reading the letter, and the letter is on the shared screen, or maybe you just read it right there live, whatever you want to do. And then afterwards, you're going to say, okay, now as the teacher, as Miss Rivera, the teacher, here are the steps, the process that I would have taken with my class to get to that final product, the letters that we just shared. And that's when you'll share what you just said. We'll have them go to stations to learn about the different things. And then maybe what you can say is, and then at the end, we'll let groups decide what product they want to create as a result of what they learned. And what we shared were 2 students that decided to write letters, but they might also have the option of doing a podcast or writing doing interviews, just giving some different ideas of what other products your class might have, but just share one completed one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And so it's just that time after you present will just be to kind of talk about the process of the lesson plan. And then we're gonna, and it might help to have that part 2 template in front of you just to be able to refer to that as we're asking you questions and things.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, that one sounds good. Then our next 2 partners, Alexis and Eileen, what are you guys working on for your product?
Hi. Yes, so for our project, we're doing 6th grade, and our TEK is identify and describe the historical influence of individuals or groups on various contemporary societies. So basically, it's like an inquiry project. The end product basically is they're gonna have an interview. So it's gonna be like they're gonna work in partners of 2. So they'll work together to come up with the interview questions, and then one of them will role play as the person, and they'll answer from the perspective based on what they researched about their life and what they learned. And I don't know, is it possible for me to share my content, or only you
Sure,
can
if you
share?
want to, let me get,
Okay,
make
perfect.
it, let me do the permissions here, but that is all sounding good so far.
While she does that, I have a quick question. Are we so we're presenting part 2 on Thursday?
Yes, you're presenting that product. So the interview, like what you're talking about, you'll show us that interview or do it for us right there live.
Yeah,
That's
we're
what
gonna
you'll do.
pre-record ours.
Okay, good. And
Yeah.
so then you will just share the recording as if you're 6th graders and that's your group work there.
Okay, so but part 2 technically isn't supposed to be turned into December the 4th, right?
Well, you know, you will have it ready when you present on Thursday. It's basically your lesson plan. And
So we
so,
can go ahead and turn it in.
yeah, I think that I said, turn it in as you present, and the last presenters are like that week or something, but you know, you can't really do your product if you haven't planned your part 2, so you should
Yes,
have it.
okay, I just
Are you
wanted to
guys-
make sure.
Are you guys able to see my screen? Because I am on my phone.
I don't right now. I do have it where
Okay,
you
hold
should be able to, but
Share content, screen, Zoom, start broadcast. Okay, there we go. It's gonna start it right now.
okay.
So basically, this is what we did. So we made like a example of what the completed workshop, like the worksheet students would have to go through before starting their interview thingy, because it's a process, because it is kind of like a inquiry project. So there's little checkpoints. So basically it's like, for us, the historical figure that we're gonna pretend to be or like role play is Sam Houston, because I wanted to have it like Texas history related to what we will be teaching. So it's like class purposes of presentation. It's due November. The presentation's an oral report interview, and it gives you like a brief description, class values, other subjects that are incorporated, and then like the resources that they'll use. And because we also have a English language arts
Uh-huh.
TEK, which is the one learning how to use primary and secondary sources. That's why we put like the how can avoid plagiarism, and then emphasizing on that so it connects to both TEKs. And then it's like facts about him, and then how it's related to Texas history. And then here are the questions that we came up, me and Alexis, for the interview. And then these are just more questions to like come up with the interview questions. So we're probably gonna move that around, put that first, and then pictures to go with our presentation, and then like an exit sheet to make sure we assess the students to make sure learning did take place.
Okay, good. Well, then that is basically your part 2, you know, it might just
Yeah.
be where you're, you know, modifying that a bit to fit into the different categories of part 2, but you have it done. That's your whole plan there. Okay, so you'll be ready to share, because that's basically the things that you'll be pulling from for the discussion that we have after your presentation when we ask you different questions.
Yes.
So that all sounds really, you know, well developed. And I think it'll just be like, what are some other historical figures that you might cover during that time? You know, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about, because I'm trying to lead into some constructive feedback after your presentation. So that might be some of the things that come up.
Okay, perfect.
That sounds good.
Mhm.
And so if you already, and yeah, you're integrating into primary and secondary, and also when they're writing those interview questions and the responses, that's also that kind of informational type of writing genre. So that's
Mhm.
another TEK that you're addressing through ELAR. So all of that, I think that all sounds great. And now it's just a matter of putting that information into the template, into the part 2 template, to make sure you address all the things that are in that one.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. then you guys are ready. And so as far as your part one PowerPoints that you did as a group, that is just going to be posted in the Google folder link that I have there. And I'm going to have everybody do like an individual gallery walk, looking at those on their own and looking at them as study resources, kind of a study guide for those areas in the exam that you need to know. And so then you'll, after you review part one on your own, is when you'll then do that quiz with the test questions that you guys provided me. And so that's how we're going to work with part one.
Okay, that
Oh.
sounds good.
Okay, then.
So, I did know that like you had posted a thing to submit it on Canvas too. Is it okay that we submitted it on Canvas as well?
Yes, I want it to be on Canvas just so it's easy for
Okay.
me to access when I'm looking at, but when you put it in the Google folder, that makes it where everybody else can see it. And so that's what I want everybody else to be able to access it to.
Okay, awesome.
So it's both places. Okay, so then, so yeah, you guys will present on Thursday. So you just let me know if you have questions as you're pulling things together, but it sounds like you're well on the way. It sounds great. And having that pre-recorded makes a lot of sense because you can edit it and make it look perfect. And like you have those pictures and things, you can kind of weave that into your video. That'll be really cool as an example.
Is that all we needed to talk about, or do you have any more questions for us?
No, that's all. It really was just making sure we're all set for exactly what those presentations are going to look like. I had so many different questions that I started worrying that I had a different vision than everybody else did. So I wanted to give this extra time so I could talk to everybody.
Okay, awesome. So have a great weekend, everyone.
Okay, you too. Thank you so much for your time today, guys, on a Saturday. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, be in
Thank you,
touch if you have
guys.
more questions.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.